Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Old Hunt, where I am still celebrating 10 years of Bloodborne. And we are currently making our way through Old Yharnam, but we are also carrying out various conversations with Alfred, and hopefully eventually Yura. At the moment, it's been rather a one-sided exchange with Yura, but Alfred seems like he wants to be more friendly. We're going to take him up on that option. But just quick before I go back to Old Yharnam, I wanted to point out this is something incredibly minor, but I think it is interesting to note that you have up here, we have Yharnam, officially translated as Central Yharnam, and it makes sense. We're having, because literally it's the katakana for Yharnam, which is Yharnam, and then we have city, and then we have center, essentially. I think I talked about that kanji before. It's sort of like a town, but it can also be like a street or a boulevard or something like that. But in this case, it's like the city center of Yharnam. And then we have, Old Yharnam down here, which is Yharnam Kyushigai, which is the former city center of Yharnam. So we're seeing, even right here in the item names, and I mean, Central Yharnam, Old Yharnam, gets the main ideas across and it sound more natural in English, right? When you're talking about like Old Town Yharnam, right, is the idea. It's the former city center and this is the current city center, but just the way that the kanji are laid out, there's a subtle difference, I think, in the emphasis here. We have, you know, current Yharnam, Old Yharnam, essentially, which, I mean, the Old Yharnam part is right here, but they didn't call this current Yharnam, now did they? See how hair splitting I'm being right now. But I do think it's an interesting little thing to note here that we have, particularly when we think about it spatially, the current city center of Yharnam being built on top of Old Yharnam. And that's an idea that I want us to keep in mind as we go forward, particularly after we've gotten that chalice, and maybe I'll bring it up again when we go back to exploring the chalice dungeons, because I think there's something at work there. Anyway, we're going to head back to Old Yharnam, we're going to talk to Alfred, I'll see you again soon. Of course, in order to talk to Alfred, we're going to need to, not run this way, run the other way. Over here somewhere? Yeah, here we go. Up this stairwell that we came down, up this ladder that we slid down. We now are slowly climbing back up. We have to go all the way back up to the secret entrance to Old Yharnam. I guess that's another potential reason that you could think of this world of Yharnam being something of a dream. I've mentioned before how weird the archaeology is and how that tends to be like one of the reasons people can give for this place here actually being a dream rather than reality. Quick shout out, by the way, to YouTube commenter Big Gubosu, Big Boss in katakana, for following along with this playthrough and offering some very detailed thoughts as to what the evidence might be for considering Yharnam, the world of Yharnam here, to be a dream. Some of that comes down to just the way that this world is put together. And I mean, who makes it so that in order to get to the old city center, you have to come down this secret shaft that is hidden away by a gravestone? It feels wrong to call this a gravestone, whatever this is. Like, that does not seem like it should be the way that you get to and from your city center. Like, it's not, the city is not laid out in an actual, like an actual city would be. And I think to the point that Big Gubosu was making, there's no way that we can see into or out of the city of Yharnam. Except maybe there was that one time when I went and said, okay, well, potentially you can imagine carts coming into and out of this one bridge, or one place on the bridge, but it's obscured. You can't actually see that that's the case. So for all we know, there's actually no way into or out of the city of Yharnam itself. So interesting thing to keep in mind. The weirdness of this place's layout may, in fact, be an additional argument for why we can understand it as a dream. And I'm just going to dodge these things for now. Just constantly roll past these enemies, because I don't particularly want to deal with them. I want to talk to Alfred. And, yeah, I figured the dog would follow me in here. Oh, dogs, plural. Oops. Alright. Oh, maybe I should have... Because after I do that... Yeah, there we go. So after I do one of my steps to the side... Oh, I wasn't fast enough that time. Maybe I was, because that was a downward strike rather than a horizontal one. I don't know. But there's a difference between doing my R1 here and then dodging into or out of something and then doing an R1 out of that. Because it's particular. The way that those dogs tend to work is they tend to lunge and then they jump back. So if you dodge their lunge and if you know which way they're going to go and then follow that up with that lunging R1 of your own with this axe, aha! You can catch them. Whereas otherwise, they will chew you to pieces. But not this time. Not this time. I know their tricks. I fought those dogs a lot. Anyway, we're out here to talk to Alfred. And I hear someone grinding an axe. Okay. I'm gonna just ignore that. Pretend that we don't have anything to worry about in that regard. Alfred, how's it going? I've rethought my position.
Oh, changed our mind, have we? Then perhaps we can cooperate and discuss what we've learned.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's team up.
Oh, very good. Very good indeed. Take this to celebrate our acquaintance.
Hey, thanks.
Beast hunting is a sacred practice. May the good blood guide your way.
Interesting line there. Literally, it works out to something like, may you have the protection of blood. But I think it's particularly interesting. First of all, may you have the protection of blood. You don't quite get the idea that it's a religious phrasing, that may the good blood guide your way just throws in your face. Like, it's sort of hard to ignore that that's... I don't know exactly how to quantify it, even. But it's hard to ignore that may the good blood guide your way is sort of a statement of faith. Right? Sort of like how in the real world we have remnants of particular like greetings that are or like when someone sneezes we say bless you, right? These remnants of religious phrases that survive. I mean, obviously in Alfred's case it's not a remnant, but the other thing that I think is interesting is he talks about good blood, right? Literally it's just may you have the protection of blood in the Japanese. But in translation, they've added in this idea of it being good blood guiding your way. And on the one hand, there's a little bit of addition, like I said, going on. But on the other hand, it makes sense, right? Because who is Alfred? He is a hunter of vile bloods. So as far as the character of Alfred is concerned, there is such a thing as good blood and bad blood, vile blood, forbidden blood. Because of the way that I'm playing this game, I don't think we're going to see the Ariana's blood vial, but it's potentially relevant here. There's part of that description which says Ariana's blood is similar indeed to precisely what was once forbidden, or something to that effect. And you can sort of see how the church has its own idea of what good blood is. And it's not just in Alfred, and it's not just in Alfred's dialogue that we can see that. We can see that in a couple other places in the game, some of which, like I just admitted, we're not going to really see in this playthrough actively. I probably will have edited it in so that you can see I'm not just making something up, so you can see it on screen. But sadly, that's one of the many things that you miss out on for not sending people to Erden Chapel. But anyway, I like that we're getting that little bit of a twist that this is a person who is following a particular set of beliefs, that this person would tell you something like, may the good blood guide your way. They're being guided by that religious phrasing, and they're being guided by that idea of good versus vile blood. Okay, now let's talk a little bit more at length about what he's got going on here.
There must be oodles for us to share. Go on, just tell me what piques your interest.
Oh, and I get distracted once again by an amazing translation. What piques your interest? I mean, literally, he says something like, please don't hold back in asking for information, right? Like, it was, the subtitle went by a little bit quick, but it was just so much better put, so much more natural in the English. It's really incredible to see the ideas come through so strongly without being bound to the literal wording that would just make it sound more generic. Very impressive work as a translator. Anyway, let's ask him about the Healing Church.
As you know, the Healing Church is the fountainhead of blood healing. Well, I'm a simple hunter, quite unfamiliar with the ins and outs of the institution. But I have heard that the holy medium of blood healing is venerated in the main cathedral. and that councillors of the old church reside in the high stratum of the cathedral ward. If you seek blood healing, and the church is willing, you should pay them a visit.
Okay, so here's the thing about Alfred. I remember saying in an earlier episode, he sort of gives away a huge amount of the game. There's a lot of things that he's just thrown at us, and
I bid you farewell. May the good blood...
yeah, bye-bye. Sort of talked over him because I'm busy processing all the many, many things that we have to sort of cover. And I'm probably going to forget some of them. Maybe I'll edit it in if I think I've forgotten something important. I've done that in past episodes. But one of the things that's important to consider with his dialogues is he talks about blood healing. The literal subtitles in the Japanese is sort of like blood salvation, right? It's the salvation of blood. And I think it makes sense to refer to that as blood healing. And let me just cut in while editing to better set up why. You see, while the Japanese word tsukui does have religious connotations, its primary meaning involves providing help or aid. Okay, now I'll let Gameplay Matt sum up the idea. The idea is there is this blood that provides people with relief, and the relief that it gives them, we know, is blood healing. I mean, hold on. Look at this. What happens when I take blood? It literally heals me. And there's a little bit more to it than that, but that's one of the base ideas that I think is important to impart. But it is interesting the way that they sort of have made it into blood healing. Also, this is something of a personal note, and the thing about questioning... So I personally have always read Alfred's lines there as sort of containing something of the idea that he's putting up a facade. He's not being completely honest with it. He says, I'm just a simple hunter, quite unfamiliar with the ins and outs of the Healing Church institution. I don't believe him when he says that. And that's a dangerous thing for me to say, because there's only so much information you can get in this game about what's going on. And once you start questioning some of it, you end up questioning a lot of it. So you sort of have to take a certain amount of things on face value. There are a lot of things in descriptions, for instance, that's like, it is said that this is what happened. It is said that this is the case. And so they're just inviting you to doubt all the time. And if you doubt everything they tell you to doubt, you'll never believe anything. Maybe not, maybe you won't be left with nothing. But it's really hard to understand what exactly it's safe to doubt and what it's not safe to doubt. But Alfred's line there in particular, he says, oh yeah, I don't know anything. I barely know anything about the church at all. I'm just a simple beast hunter. I think that's part of an act that he's putting on. He tells us that the higher-ups in the Healing Church are found in the upper strata. Like, they're literally, like, upwards in the Healing Church. And we're going to go to an upper part of the cathedral ward later in the game, and you know who's there? It's the upper echelons of the Healing Church, one of the high-powered factions that runs the Healing Church. That is in fact where they live. How did he knew all about that, didn't he? He's telling us that I've just heard that they venerate the medium of blood healing in the main cathedral, right? Which yeah, okay, yeah, you've heard that. Surely, like, it's not exactly that hard. We're going to be going into the main cathedral. We're going to see the place where something is being venerated. I mean, I feel like he could probably have seen that, even as a simple hunter. I just get the impression that he's not being entirely honest with us. And the last thing that I can remember in the moment to call to mind is that phrase that I've been using a few times now, which gets at the idea of a holy medium. And I think this is important to keep in mind because we're going to see it again. Hi everyone, Editing Matt here, this time cutting out some misinformation Gameplay Matt was about to spread. Having done that, know that we'll be returning to this particular phrase when we have more context for understanding it. But in the meantime, I think it's worth considering one effect of the official translation, holy medium. Because what is a medium, right? It's something that contains or can deliver other things. And what is something in this game that we've already discovered is like an incredible medium? Well, it's blood. Blood is like one of the best mediums for anything. Remember how I was talking at the end of the last episode about how like we're literally enhancing our weapons and our flesh with the stuff that blood contains? We have the echoing will of the those who are gone, right? The blood echoes, the bequeathed will, that lives on in blood. Blood is the medium that preserves the will of the past and the echoing will of the fallen. That is so that inheres in blood. Blood also contains the substance that can harden into bloodstones or blood gems, depending on how it is structured after death, right? So you have all this stuff that blood is a medium for, that is the source of what we are and what we have become. And all of that comes from blood. So when Alfred talks about a holy medium, there's just this implication here that he's probably talking about blood. And we'll get a little bit more into that when I think we come back and talk about his next dialogue. His next dialogue is even more packed with information. So it'll be interesting to revisit after running around a little bit more. But I think that's enough cerebral talk for now. It's hurting my head already. You can probably already hear I'm starting to struggle to articulate any sort of coherent thoughts. But those are all things that are worth keeping in mind when we're talking about the lore that Alfred has just given us as it relates to the Healing Church and blood healing. And of course, that's all going to be relevant for us because we are looking for pale blood, which we've been told the Healing Church will probably know a thing or two about. So, whatever their maybe their source of blood healing, maybe this holy medium is pale blood. Maybe we've been, we're just on the cusp of achieving our personal goal, even though we may not be close to achieving the goal of, achieving the goal of escaping the dream. Haha! Now, there's a goal that I have completely achieved, which is tracking down this thing and looting it for its materials. Get the stones that have formed in its blood. Or after its blood, that were melted within its blood? Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. No more thinking, not this time. not think time now. Oh, and there was one other thing that I saw in editing that I missed in this initial sort of starting area for Old Yharnam, where I don't know if anyone else gets annoyed when they're watching someone and there's an item in view and that the person who's playing a game like just does not pick up that item. But I was getting that feeling for myself when I saw that I failed to pick up these blood vials before. So there we go. Now I got them. Took me a little bit, but and I had to get annoyed at myself in the process, but I got it. And now, since I've opened that shortcut ahead already, I am going to take another approach. Not exactly going to follow the same route that I was following last time. Gonna take an alternative approach to Old Yharnam here. Interesting. Oops, get me out. No, I'm gonna die. Alright, well, that was certainly an alternative approach. I'm gonna try that again and maybe still stay alive next time. If you time it just right, you can land on that like pillar after you run off the top of the house that you're on and roll right next to the what do you call it? Roll right next to the ledge there and land on like a giant stone windowsill. Alright, let's see if I can get it this time. Nope. Nope, my timing is off! I got the roll then. Alright, I fell too far, but I should still survive the fall. Alright. You can actually land on those ledges, those like sills that I was talking about, and you take way less damage. But, you know what? I made it, I'm alive, I'll take it. I realize something up there, maybe one of the crows, has my blood echoes, but we'll just deal with that. We'll let that be. In the meantime, we've come into this house where there's actually quite a lot of important stuff. Also a ton of enemies. So I'm going to try... Well, I was further away than I thought I was. I'm going to try to finish these enemies off before I get swarmed by the mob from upstairs. Oh, they're already here. Alright, time to run outside. Because thankfully, as tough as these enemies are, and as many of them as there are, they have a very difficult time figuring out doorways. Which, quite frankly, I appreciate. I appreciate that it's so hard for them to get out of doors. Because if it was easy, this would be a death trap out here. Instead, well, it'd be a death trap for me out here. Instead, it's a death trap for them. It is the killing ground of a hunter. Ha ha ha! Look at this. Look at all this whole parade. All these enemies. So glad I did not have to deal with them. Instead, I can pick them off one by one. I should have kept attacking. I was a little bit slow on that follow-up. Should have just kept attacking. But this is the benefit of having that regenerating blood gem on my weapon, because that is normally an amount of health that I would have to rely on blood bullets to heal back up efficiently. But instead, you know, provided I don't get smacked by this horde that I'm following. I will just slowly heal all that health back over time. These big ones really like to go for that throw. Alright. Ooh, and I've maxed out my blood vials again. I thought I was lower than that. It's very difficult to keep track of how many blood vials I do or do not have. Anyway, there's a lot of important stuff in this house. We are about to learn some of the tragedy behind Old Yharnam. Like, we already know bad things happened in this place. It's about to get a lot worse. Why is this stuff white? I don't know why they painted those particular thing. I mean, painted. If there were people in the world, they would have had to have painted them that way. Maybe that's a 1.00 thing. Maybe that's like, maybe these are all the color of everything else in an updated version of the game. I don't know. But anyway, here we go. This charred hunter set, if I remember the name of it correctly. I'm going to put it on. It doesn't have a headpiece, if I remember correctly. Anyway, let's take a look at the description here, and this is where we get to learn sort of the horrific truth of Old Yharnam. So, you'll have to allow me to take it from here, Gameplay Matt, because you've forgotten something important. I know you've talked about the name of the antidote literally being white pills before, but the description is also relevant for understanding what happened to Old Yharnam. Here's a quick literal version of what's written on the item. Small pills for treating poison. Medicine used for treating the ashen blood ailment, a strange sickness that once ate away at Old Yharnam. However, their effect was no more than incredibly temporary. The ashen blood ailment unfortunately became the trigger for the later tragedy, the spread of the plague of beasts. Okay, you sort of have to read between the lines of this item description and combine it with other information to see what happened here. The idea seems to be that there was a mysterious illness known as ashen blood that spread through Old Yharnam, and the white medicinal pills that could counteract poison were the most effective means of treating it. Sadly, they weren't effective enough, since the antidotes could only provide a small measure of relief. Then, the implication is that the healing church showed up with its miraculous blood as a means of relief, or salvation, which presumably resolved that medical crisis. However, that whole affair involving ashen blood ended up preparing the way for the subsequent plague of beasts. As for how that went, this is where we return to the awful truth of Old Yharnam as chronicled on the description of the charred hunter garb. Here's my quick literal version of that. One of the standard sets of hunter attire prepared by the workshop. Created in the era of the Old Yharnam incident, amid the horrible spread of the plague of beasts and the purification of burning the town. The cape, which appears wet, displays a high defensive value in regards to flames. This was the sort of attire worn when hunting the surviving individuals suffering from the plague amid fiercely raging flames and the scent of burning blood. So there's, right there, the horror of what's going on in Old Yharnam, or what happened in Old Yharnam. The implication seems to be that there was this terrible night of the hunt, and the plague of beasts had proliferated to such an extent that, as we know, the church decided to abandon the people of this place. They locked the town down. They set fire to the thing. It was burned. And hunters were at the ready wearing fireproof or highly fire-resistant clothing to hunt down the people who survived the flames. And that sort of ties in with the burning, like the smoking piles of corpses that we've seen. So it seems like it was this horrific affair where, beast or no, anything in Old Yharnam had to go. They decided to just cut their losses because the town was so far gone. You couldn't tell if someone was a beast or not a beast. So they set fire to the town, and hunters had to go in and take out those who remained. And it gets at that idea that I was talking about before, about how merciless you have to be as a hunter, especially once you designate something as your prey, right? The idea of that whole prey slaughtered message that we see in the English translation of the boss fight, even though what it's translating from is also the English "you hunted," right? It's when you designate something as your prey, when you decided, okay, everyone here in Old Yharnam is effectively prey, they all have to die, they all have to be put down. Sad as it might be, they all have to be put down. It's just, what a horrific affair to be caught up in. And I really do think that the game is sort of throwing the horrors of that at you in a way as to sort of get you to question what it means to designate something as prey. And I don't think it's a coincidence that Dura is taking up his station here. All those warnings, all those, essentially, right, bad enough stuff has happened here. This town is now sealed off and self-contained. There's no reason for a hunter to be in here. Like, hasn't enough horror been committed? Let's let these beasts go about their lives, sort of, right? It's sort of going into the tragedy of the hunt. So on the one hand, you have the horrificness of what happened here in the past, and on the other hand, you have the staunch stance of Dura, who identifies you, like the hunter will face the hunt. So if you try and start hunting the beasts of Old Yharnam, he's there with his Gatling gun to stop you. I mean, he hasn't done that great of a job. We're still doing okay. But he is presenting a threat, and he is presenting, like, as a hunter who's familiar with the hunter's dream, he is putting his position on the line here to stop us. He's using his skills to prevent us from messing with this place. And I just think it's an interesting setup, especially after we may have already been somewhat sympathetic to the plight of the people we've heard through the incidental dialogue in Yharnam itself. And of course, then there's the other side of it, which is the people who live indoors, who've shut themselves up away, like at the special way that Yharnam has of treating guests, right? You wander around Yharnam and you're treated with open scorn by everybody, not literally everybody, but many of the people inside their houses. They don't have a kind word to say about outsiders. They blame all of this on you. Like, it's just this awful situation where you're sort of seeing the worst traits of Yharnamites. But at the same time, you can hear them just shiver, not necessarily shiver, but like feel the effects of the cold, calling out for, warmth from the sister, decided like they desperately want to live. They're trying to hold on to their lives. You sort of have to question, like, do these things deserve compassion? And the answer that we get in the first part of the game is, well, tragic as the situation may be, I was talking about this already, tragedies are the regular part of Yharnam, right? Ultimately, you have to put down the beasts. And it may be sad, the situation may not have anything to do with their control, but the beasts can't really be allowed to proliferate. That makes sense. And now Old Yharnam is sort of taking that and taking it up a notch, and at the same time providing you the counterpoint of Dura. And we're not done with that through line. It's going to take us a while to see it fully play out, but I do think that you're supposed to be entertaining these notions. And I do think that sort of one of the things that I've talked about before in terms of a hunter is that control. And Eileen and talking about how, you need to have just the right amount of fear, right? Because without any fear, if you're just pure aggression, you may as well be a beast. But if you're too afraid, you can't be a hunter. You sort of need to walk this fine balance. Where is that fine balance? How do you find it? How do you calibrate yourself? You can't even tell what's real in Bloodborne. How do you strike a balance between what's real and what's not? And I think the way the game puts this in front of you is by confronting you with these situations like the horrible burning of Old Yharnam. And this, I should have done this from the other screen, but I'm pretty sure this description is basically entirely the same, except for the third line of actual text there, which is just a slightly different way of saying, because it was prepared in this era where there are these terrible flames and the spread of the plague of beasts, it displays high resistance to fire, right? So just does it in a little bit less. It doesn't mention the cape that appears to be wet on the chest piece. Anyway, here's what the executioners, the hunters of Old Yharnam wore when they went through the streets and were hunting people down, hunting beasts down, right? You can't tell, person or beast. Anyway, that's all the tragedy, but we're also going to get a little bit of lore. And this, very first thing right here is going to be something you're going to want to keep in your mind for a while if this is your first time playing the game. If you've already been through the game once, you'll know exactly what's being referenced. The red moon is close, is the opening phrase there. And then we have, this town is all beasts. And then Kiriganai, there's no end to them, presumably. Them is not actually specified in the Japanese, but I can't see what else it would be in reference to. Is it too late to do anything except for burn everything? So this is clearly from the point of view from someone who's being confronted with that difficult choice of, we're in this terrible situation, beasts are running rampant, this whole thing feels like it's out of control. Is there nothing we can do? We really don't want to burn Old Yharnam to the ground, but it really feels like we have no other choice, right? It's that tragedy again where, yes, it's terrible, but is there a better option? Probably not. I don't know. Well, I wasn't there. But the key lore thing to keep in mind for later on is that this incredible spread of everybody turning into beasts in the old city center here is tied to the proximity of the red moon. Whew. All right. That's a lot of lore. That's a lot of tragedy. Well, let's get back to fighting some enemies. Let's just get out there and kill a few beasts. Uh-oh. Maybe I'll get killed in the process. I would prefer to avoid getting killed in the process. Stop shooting at me, Gira. There we go. Thank you. I appreciate you for listening. Because I would like to run out over here and come back to where I was before. Alright, now I can go down this shortcut. Okay. And we can sort of pick up where we left off. Whew. So, boy, that was a ton of lore. It's only been a little bit more than half an hour, but I feel like I've been going for longer just because of the density of the lore. Wild. No. See, I knew there would be a lot of crows here. I figured I could deal with them, but I have yet to die to a bunch of crows, but when there's a whole bunch of them like that, they can cause problems. Uh-oh. Okay, good. Today is not the day I die to a mob of crows. We may get there. We may yet reach that point, but it is not there yet. Come on. All right, and there's some more upgrade materials for me in my multi-weapon playthrough. Oh, and this, I didn't realize. Look at this. We're going to be going there very soon. That is our destination. And actually, I was just mentioning it's been a little bit more than half an hour, and I feel like it's been a pretty dense episode as well. So I think this is a good point to call an end to my hunt for the evening. Thank you all for joining me. And next time, we will be making our way towards this rather imposing place here. We'll probably talk a little bit more to Alfred. We'll see what happens. But again, I I will be calling a hunt to my end for the evening, but I hope that yours goes well, because I wish you good hunting. Okay. If the gesture menu will work. Good hunting, everyone.